Hello. Oh, I have tea. It's fine. Hello. Everybody I know came back in January with writer's block, except for me. Okay, that might be an overstatement. I don't know. Lots of the people that I'm in the social circle of, who are writers, came back in January from their holiday with writer's block. And I did not have that. And I have been thinking for the last, how many weeks has it been now? 8 or so weeks about why I did not come back in January with writer's block. And I realised it's not just that I now have a better expectation of how much I can write in January because of my data gathering last year. If you want more information about that, please watch my first video of this year. But it's also because I don't really get writer's block anymore. And I've heard don't get mad and judgy. I'm here with advice. I have advice. I've heard other authors say that. Authors who are more prolific or more experienced than I am. I've heard them say, I don't get writer's block. I've never had that. And I have had that, just to be super clear. At the beginning of my writing career, as I like to call it, which was back in 2017 when I started sharing short stories online for free every single week, which I still do. But back then I got writer's block all the time. All the time. It was awful. But now, since 2021, genuinely, since I published my first book in 2021, I now have 6, I have had writer's block less and less and less every single year. And I was trying to figure out why. And I realised that there's a bunch of reasons. And I'm going to give you all of those reasons as potential pieces of advice. These are things that you can try implementing and see if they help you. And I can't guarantee anything. And also, I know that there's inevitably going to be the young me watching this eventually at some point. I don't know if it's going to be immediately or 2 years down the line. But eventually, some young me is going to be watching this and it's going to hear all of this advice and it's going to be well, I can't do any of those things. Ugh. And the thing is, I know that that's exactly what they're going to do because that's exactly what I used to do at these writer's block advice. Because all of this advice, well, not all of it, most of this advice is stuff I've heard before and scoffed at. And the thing is I don't know, I'm not saying you can't access this advice until you're much more experienced in your writing. But I'm not saying that. Anyway, so my point is that here is my advice. Advice piece number 1. Ooh, numbers. I haven't done that for a while. Number 1 is to get healthier habits. I'm so sorry. I know. It's the worst advice ever. But it's also the best advice. Because if you're more in the habit of taking breaks, you're more likely to be able to come back with a greater understanding of what you're like after a break and with a greater level of rest from your break, which is very helpful. It's not just taking breaks, though. It's taking breaks that are actual breaks. It's making sure that you build in short breaks regularly, especially if you have a day job, which I have had at various points. We don't currently have one, but yeah, if you have a day job, another job, or another primary duty of life, so maybe you're a parent, maybe you're caring for someone who's disabled or elderly, maybe you're caring for yourself who is disabled or elderly, I don't know. Maybe you're doing something else really important that's not a day job but takes up a lot of your time and energy and stuff. I don't know what else that could be, but that's just because I don't have all the life experience in the world. Maybe you're doing, I don't know, something else is my point. So, you've got something that's a priority that's taking up a lot of your time. Obviously, I understand that, especially if you want writing to be your career, there's this urge and this desire to never take a break ever. Because if you never take a break ever, you will get to this stage, or wherever you want to be, much, much faster, right? If you never take that's the logic, that's the thought process, is that if you never take a break ever, you will get here faster. And the thing is you won't, because you're gonna exhaust yourself. And whether you reach a period of burnout or not, you won't be in a healthy place. And you will be too tired to write more often than you're expecting. I'm just saying, there is a very delicate line between pushing yourself and pushing yourself too hard. And it is a line that I am uncomfortably familiar with because sometimes you don't realize you stepped over that line until after you're already way, way past it. And you sort of glance back and you're there like, oh no, was that the line? Oh, it's been like 3 days or whatever. So I get it, but that's why it's important to build in the breaks in advance. So like for me now, I take 2 days off Instagram every single week. I take off Wednesday and I take off Sunday. Okay, there are exceptions to this rule. There are exceptions to every rule. There's always exceptions. I am not the Interplanetary Alliance. There are always exceptions to every single rule. Anyway, so I take 2 days off Instagram every single week without fail. And then on top of that, I also take a couple of days off Instagram every single year as well. This is just Instagram. I know that's really random. But I take Monday, I take Wednesday and Sunday off Instagram every single week. I take my birthday, I take Hogmanay, and I take my wedding anniversary, or rather I take a couple of days around my birthday, a couple of days around Hogmanay, and a couple of days around my wedding anniversary. So it's not even just a day, it's a couple of days. It's a solid block of days that I'm just not going on Instagram. I'm not going on Instagram, I'm not posting anything, I'm not thinking about what I have to post or what I have to caption, or I have to do a hashtag or what sound I'm going to use or whatever. I'm not doing any of that bullshit. And it's so relaxing, man. And like, I'm not saying I don't like Instagram. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I don't like Instagram as a way to connect with people. I'm not saying I don't think it's a useful resource. I'm not saying that I'm not gonna, like, that there's no joy in posting there or interacting with people there. I'm saying I've built in buffer time. I have built in time to not do that so that I can keep doing that. I have built in time to stop writing. Those same 3 sets of days are absolute no-goes for writing. Unless I have a really great idea, because I'm not going to hold myself. There's an exception to every rule. So like when it comes to built-in holidays and built-in breaks from work, I currently, right now, work 5 days a week. I write 5 days a week. That's my whole job. Monday to Friday. My wife starts working, either goes or is at the desk that I'm pointing at now. She goes to work or starts work on her home laptop. And then I start working. This is my desk. I start working. And then when she stops working, I stop working, right? That's sort of how I run these things, because time is an illusion to me, and it's just easier to make my day fit around her day, because she has like contracted hours and I am my own boss, and my boss doesn't care. Not doesn't care. Actually, yeah, doesn't care how many hours I'm working as long as the work gets done, right? If I say I'm going to write 3 chapters today and I get 3 chapters done by 10 o'clock in the morning, I could quit. I could just call it, because I don't tend to do goals, but if I'm going to do a goal, that's how it works, right? Anyway, so building in breaks is really helpful. So like, I currently don't work on weekends, but I recognize that that's not fair or reasonable as a rule to put out into the universe. I'm not saying don't write on weekends, because obviously if you have a day job or kids or blah, 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 all of those things that I said, it is much harder not to do that. But give yourself at least 2 nights a week, 2 evenings, if you're working a day job or whatever. Give yourself at least 2 evenings a week that you do not have to do any writing, right? I know that sounds awful, because you're probably thinking, but I get so much more done. No, you wouldn't. You're going to hit writer's block. You're more likely to hit writer's block if you work yourself endlessly with no built-in buffers. We fought for weekends. We're still fighting for the 4-day work week, although some of us think it should be less than that. We're still fighting for the 4-day work week. Give yourself a break, a regular, scheduled break. And even if you choose to use that time, like say you've got an hour a day for writing, maybe that's like a thing that you've negotiated with the people around you. I promise I'm getting to more writer's block tips after this. But say you've made a deal with the people around you that you're going to take an hour every single night for writing, Monday through Sunday, all the days. You can use that hour for something other than writing. You can use that hour to read a writing craft book, to read a regular book in your genre, to read a regular book in a genre that is like tangential to yours. So like normally you're like writing fantasy, and so therefore you're reading a sci-fi book for a change, right? Or normally you're writing a romantasy, so you're reading a romance specific book. Or maybe you're writing like literally all I write is sci-fi and fantasy, so I'm just funny then, like what other genres are there? Maybe you're, I don't know, tangentially related genres are a thing. It's the genre that brushes up against your genre. Bonk bonk. Anyway, so maybe use that time for some of these other tips. You know, maybe don't, like, giving yourself a break doesn't have to mean, oh, okay, I'll go and be somebody else's priority. I'll go and do something else that is an important thing that is going to take up my energy. It can mean like literally, well, it's supposed to mean literally taking a break. I know we all do shit on weekends, but there is supposed to be time in there for you to actually take a break, right? That's my point. Taking a break is pre-writer's block. Taking a break is a really great cure for writer's block. And also recognizing that the longer your break, the more difficult it is to get back into the swing of it. That's just really normal. Accept that and move on. I'm not saying that is why everyone I know has had writer's block. I'm absolutely not saying that. I'm saying these are my other tips. Are you ready? So these ones hopefully will be faster than that one. So the next thing on my list of tips is to take in more media. Yes, I know I already sort of like tickled that tip. Tickled? Teased? Why? What? No. Tantalized. What is the word I'm looking for? I don't remember. It just dangled it on a string like a cat toy in front of you. I know I already sort of vaguely referenced it, but I'm going to get into it more here. If you're not taking in media, you will have no ideas. And unfortunately, as much as we all love our good comfort books, series and music, sometimes it's got to be new stuff. Although to be fair, I do replay Portal every single year and I always get new ideas. But I don't know if that's like the puzzle solving portion of it. Like solving those puzzles allows my brain to make other connections. I don't know. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But yeah, taking in new media, even if it's something that you're not, even if it's something you're not enjoying, no, even if it's something that you have criticism about, can be really helpful, especially sometimes if you have criticism about it or you think that this is done badly in this way, that way, the other way. Because it allows you to then be there like, well, I would do it this way, that way, the other way. And suddenly you have this new idea, right? And you may be thinking, well, I have 100,000 ideas. That's not my problem. That's okay. We'll get to that. Don't worry about it. And I always scoffed at that advice. I always hated that advice because I was like, I want to output, not input. But you do have to input in order to be able to output, unfortunately. It fucking sucks, but it's true. I think this is the thing that's missing from all of the writer's block advice that I've ever looked at, is because people are there like, it's a great tip, and I'm there like, it fucking sucks. No, like, and it's the worst part is I love reading books, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. I love reading books, I love watching movies, I love playing video games, I love, imbibing media. But like, it fucking sucks when you want to write and you can't, and you know that a solution to that problem is going and reading a book, and you're sort of there like, but I wanted to write a book. It's annoying. I get that. Believe me, I get that. But it's a thing. And maybe you've watched these first 2 tips and you've been there like, well, I don't think taking a break in either a regular capacity or like as a rest or to imbibe new media is actually going to help my writer's block, because in the grand scheme of things, I'm staring at the empty page and I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't write any words. And it's like page fright, as it were, which I don't think I've heard anyone call it. And I think we should all start using that if we're not. Page fright. Anyway, so when dealing with page fright, there are a couple of different tips that can be really helpful here, and these are also generally good writer's block tips. So thing number 1 is change the colour. Well, actually, thing number 1 is change the format, but thing number 1 is change the colour, because everyone says change the format. If you change the colour of your screen, you can do it in Scrivener really, really easily. Other ways to do it are a little bit more difficult. Oh, Ellipsis also, Ellipsis writing software. It's a browser-based software. It's also really easy there, but they have a limited number of colours. In Scrivener, you can change it to anything. Mine's purple, because that actually helps me write, because I have dyslexia. but change the colour of your text, change the colour of your background, change something about the colour or the form, like the form that you're writing in, and see if that helps. I know it sounds stupid, but sometimes writing on a purple page is just a little bit easier than writing on a white page. Because I think partly because it feels a little bit less serious. I mean, not so much to me, because again, I get all of my important documents from like anywhere that allows you to have it printed on a different colour. All of my important documents come on purple paper because it's easier for me to read, and it's an accessibility feature. But like, so it's not like an unserious colour to me, but you could set it to an unserious colour. That's an option. Change the colour, change the format. This is the one that's the like typical piece of advice. So like if you're writing by hand, try writing on your computer. If you're writing on your computer, try writing by hand. If you can't write by hand because you have some kind of disability, try using voice to text software. You can use it on most phones. Microsoft Word has one. Google Docs has one. These are not the best companies. I have previously used there's a website called otter.ai. It's not an AI website, but otter.ai, I started using it back in like 2018. It's technically for Zoom meeting notes, but it does, like, you speak at it, it records your voice, you don't have to listen to that, and it types up approximately what you've said. Now, if you've got complicated character names, you may want to rename them to like Steve and Jen and Joe, because it can't recognise Nat as a name, so just an FYI. But something like that can be really helpful, because suddenly you're talking instead of writing, and it's much easier for a lot of people, not everyone, obviously, to do talking than it is to do writing. So yeah, change the format. Change your position also is another one. And again, this one can be really difficult. Like if you have a desk, or you have like a tower computer, or like you only have this one zone, or maybe you work in your bedroom, or whatever. Like you only have one area that you can really write in, and it's not easy to go to another location. Like people will say the thing of go to a cafe or go to your local library, and those are great tips if you have money to spend in the cafe, or if you have access to your local library and it's close enough that you could reliably travel there and you're allowed to go on your own and it's safe for you to go on your own, whatever. But I recognise that that's not a possibility for everyone. So sometimes the solution is get a different chair, or turn on a different light, or can you shift by 90 degrees, or maybe try standing up or sitting down or reclining, or like this. That's sometimes enough to change your position. When I get really stuck, this is probably a slightly different one, but actually, yeah, let's just hop into tangentially, like I can't remember what tip I'm on. I love that I started with numbers, immediately forgotten the numbers. Can't remember what tip I was on, but we'll call this 0.5 of that tip, which is when I get really, really stuck with something, like a plot problem usually. But when I get really, really stuck, one of the things I'll do is I'll get up from my desk and I'll start pacing, right? Because the movement helps me think of it. I'm very neurodivergent. If I can't get up, because, you know, sometimes that's the thing, I tend to do like sways instead because it works fairly similarly. And the other thing that I do is I start ranting, right? Which has become a bit of a problem now that my wife works from home, because she can hear me ranting, and it's story stuff, so she's interested. But usually she's not here. Well, not usually. We're getting used to the new normal. But when she's not here, I'll rant to the dog, or the cat, or myself. And I'll just talk myself through the problem, because again, for me, talking about stuff out loud is a really helpful thing. Or if I can't do talking out loud because, you know, my wife is working from home, or even worse, she's in a meeting, I will grab a piece of paper and I will start ranting to myself on that piece of paper instead. I will start, and this is one of those things of like, I feel like I'm just like spiraling into brand new pieces of advice every single 5 minutes. So we're 0.5 now, which is when you are doing your paper ranting, you can also do the thing of like, you can either go for the traditional rant of like, I want this to work, why isn't it working? This is the situation I'm in. This is the really important part of the ranting, rather than the why isn't this working, is this is the position I'm in and this is kind of where I want it to go, or this is the position I'm in and I'm not sure where to go. But the recapping over what's just happened, very helpful. So recap over what's just happened. And then also, one of the things that I've done in the past, not so much now, but back when I was getting writer's block more often, is coming up with like bullet points of where we could go next. And that sounds like an outline, but it's not, because the first one was always dinosaurs invade. Every single time. Because if your first idea in a typical fantasy or sci-fi book that does not currently involve dinosaurs is dinosaurs invade, and then the second option is everyone dies, everything else sounds much more reasonable and much less silly. But because you've started your list with something silly and funny that's never going to happen, suddenly everything else, even your worst like legit idea, doesn't seem so awful, because at least it's not dinosaurs, right? It doesn't have to be dinosaurs, it could be anything. It just has to be really unrelated to what's going on in your story. Something that's purposefully completely absurd. My next writer's block tip is the one that everybody wants to work, but is the rarest. Just keep going. How in the world do you just keep going in the face of writer's block? Well, basically, what you have to do is you have to be willing to write real trash. And if you're not willing to do that, this advice is no good for you. So I've been writing my urban fantasy thing lately, because I couldn't face the thought of doing any more rewrite edits. I love my books and I love every piece of the writing process, but that one is probably the one I love the least. Just below. Actually, yeah, I think proofreading is the one I love the least, because dyslexia is a nightmare. But yeah, rewriting is up there in the I do love it, but I also don't love it. But so I've been drafting the next stage of this urban fantasy thing. And where was I going with this? Oh, and I have about 4 or 5 scenes that I have written with the knowledge that in all likelihood they are going into the trash folder. And every single one of them has gone into the trash folder, but every single one of them has opened the door to a new scene. And this is what you need to get comfy with to be able to write through writer's block, is you need to get comfy with the idea that you are going to write some trash that you're never going to use. Because if you're not comfy with that, and if you're not comfy with the writing this thing, what you've actually got is not writer's block, it's perfectionism. And honestly, actually, awkwardly, the best way to deal with that is similarly to write some real trash. And the thing is, the way to beat perfectionism is not to have something perfect, it's to have something trash. Ideally, actually, it's to have something trash that people like, but to have something trash that you can look at as a... But if you can't get people to like it, it's to have something trash that you can look at and be there like, well, at least it's not bad as this. This is the trash. Other tips that other people have said that I don't really like, but you know, you do you, include things like not being able to see what you've written before, which I find to be a trash piece of advice, because one of my best things for writer's block is to reread what's just come before. Or go back through and reread and get like, oh, this is what I was going to do next because this is the foreshadowing for that. But for some people, that's not helpful. And the more helpful thing is to not be able to see it. So like turn your font to the same color as your background, or to make it in one of those fonts that's like purposefully illegible. Like there's a font that I'm pretty sure it's for comic book artists to have, like for text in like books and on signs and stuff in their comics, or like regular artists also, regular any kind of visual artist, but I think most of the comic book artists are likely to use it for like comics in general, not just comic books, because it's just like it looks like minimum in badly written cursive, just all the time, and obviously you can't really read that, so you can use that font. I don't know what it's called. I wish I did. You can have it on ellipses. I know that. But like, do something like that. That's one of those pieces of advice. Another one is to build yourself a writing ritual or routine. But I find that tends to backfire, because if you're then not in your writing ritual or routine, it can be much harder to get started. Another thing that I've heard as a piece of advice is to do co-writing, like body double with someone. Do like, even if it's not someone who's actively there, like loading someone up on YouTube who's doing writing sprints or something, or like whose whole purpose is just, I am working, come work with me for an hour. Like doing that can be really helpful for a lot of people, because it feels like working with somebody else, even if it's not. Setting yourself a timer can be really helpful for some people. Sometimes actually what does work for me with writer's block is getting a snack, which isn't a brilliant piece of advice to give to people, because obviously, like, you know your body, you know what you're allowed to eat, you know whether you're hungry, you know whether snacking is something that is like reasonable for you to do, or if it's something that opens a door that you don't want to open. I'm not trying to guesstimate what your life looks like. I'm saying for me, sometimes snack. Because sometimes when I have writer's block, it's not really writer's block. This is the fundamental ultimate ending of this whole video, is more often than not now, these days, when I come up against something that makes me stop writing, or come up against a point of struggle with my writing, I don't see it as writer's block anymore. Again, I've been doing writing and publishing of short stories for 8 years and of books for almost 4. I don't tend to see it as writer's block anymore. Because if I'm looking at a project and I'm finding myself with a problem, what I tend to do more times than I don't is I look at the problem itself. I try and find what the base of the problem is. Maybe it's that I didn't know where I was going in a story and I have to go back and reread so that I can remember what's come before and what plot loops need closing. Would an outline help with this? Not for me, but maybe for somebody else. Or maybe it's that I'm just too tired to do anything today and I need to take a break. Or maybe it's that I'm just fresh out of ideas and I need to read some books in the genre that I'm writing in for, like, what does it look like? Like, I read a book the other day, an urban fantasy book, because I've been struggling with urban fantasy, like, side plots. And this urban fantasy book was a jewel heist urban fantasy book. Jewel heist with a witch and a werewolf, right? Not what I'm writing at all. Not even a little bit. There's no jewel heists going on in my books, in all likelihood. I mean, actually, maybe in one of my IPA books, but that's a separate issue. So, but it's a jewel heist with a witch and a werewolf is what happened in this book. And it was only a novella, so it's quite short. But I came away from that with so many ideas. None of them are lifted from the book itself. That's not saying you can't take ideas and inspiration from books and like twist things on their head and whatever. You absolutely can. But like, none of the ideas that I got were from the book itself. It was just from reading a book in the genre and being there like, oh, cool, witch and a werewolf, interesting concept. Ooh, cabals of sorcery, interesting concept. And like seeing all of these concepts and then being able to be there like, okay, I don't want to do any of that, but I want to do these things. It was a good book. I can't remember what it was called, because of course not. But anyway, So like, and then if I'm hungry or I'm tired, I'm just like, I'll solve those problems. If the problem is that I just can't face the thought of doing this particular thing, I let myself do other things. And that's a really delicate balance to find, because sometimes you'll go through an entire year, you'll end up with 14 projects on the go at one time, and you won't finish any of them. That's an unpleasant position to be in. But such is life. I try to stick to 4 or 5 projects at a time, because that's the optimum number for me. I currently have 14. It's so many, but to be fair, actually it's 13 now because one of them's gone down by a book. But to be fair, some of them, like I have like 4 IPA books on the go, and that kind of also only counts as one project. I have several of these claret brew books on the go, and that kind of sort of only counts as one project. You see what I mean? So if you bunk those down, you take away 8 from 14 is 6. I only really have 7 or 8 projects. Still more than I want, but anyway, I let myself work on other things. And like, especially for me, it's great because I write short stories anyway. Like I regularly write the short stories that I'm sharing for free every single week. Again, if you want to read them, the links are in the description box below, right next to the like and subscribe buttons if you feel like sticking around. But because I write these short stories every single week, it's a really easy way to just be there like, right, do I have writer's block? Which is, for me, the way that I term writer's block is an inability to write anything, or I'm just stuck in this particular project right now. And if I go and write a short story, because it only takes like maybe an hour, maybe 4 hours sometimes when it's really hard, but like, because it only takes a short amount of time because it's only a short story, I can do that and come back and be there like, okay, this is the project that's a problem. Or sometimes I'll write a short story. That's probably a new piece of advice. Sometimes I'll write a short story and I'll come back and I'll feel refreshed and ready to go. Or like, there's all of these different things, but a lot of the time with writer's block, it's really easy to feel stuck and go, oh, I have writer's block, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do necessarily, but sometimes that hinders more than it helps. We've all had writer's block. Okay, no, not all. Most of us have suffered with writer's block. It's a nightmare. It's awful. We hate it. And sometimes what you're facing is not writer's block. It is something else entirely. And that is okay. And it's really useful and valuable to see if it is writer's block or if you are facing something else. Examine your writer's block, see where it comes from, see what the problem is at its core. Are you tired? Are you bored? Are you hungry? Are you out of ideas? Do you need to work on something else? Are you putting too much pressure on yourself? Are you facing perfectionism? Because the answer to those questions will lead you to the most appropriate solution in a way that even this video about writer's block will not be able to do without answering those questions. I hope this was helpful because that was its intended purpose. Or at least entertaining if not. I will be back in 2 weeks' time with a new video. I don't know what yet. I have no updates about what is going on with what I'm bringing out this year because reasons and things and reasons. If you want to find my books, my short stories, or support me via my Ko-fi account, all the links you need are in the description box below, right next to the like and subscribe buttons. Please do feel like sticking around. You can also check my whole back catalogue of YouTube videos if you haven't yet. I've got a bunch. I've been doing this for a while now. Hello, kitten. Ah, hello, kitten. Baby, no. Sorry about that. Bye.